Have you ever spent days or maybe even weeks crafting just the absolute perfect presentation?
Oh, I think we all have, right?
Right. Like you've meticulously researched every single data point. You've built the most logical, rational, ironclad argument humanly possible.
The slides are visually stunning.
Exactly. The spreadsheets are flawless. And then you stand up in that room, you start delivering your masterpiece, and you watch the key decision maker completely check out after like 5 minutes.
Yeah, they glance at their phone.
Their eyes glaze over,
Yeah.
and you walk out of there assuming, well, my idea just wasn't good enough.
Or you think you're just not cut out for high-stakes communication.
Yeah, but the truth is actually far stranger. Because the problem isn't your idea at all. The problem is literally an evolutionary flaw in human biology. Right. You are speaking to the completely wrong part of their brain.
It is a jarring realization when you finally see it happening in real time. Because, we assume that since we are in a professional setting, a boardroom, a Zoom call, a client meeting, we're communicating brain to brain in this highly evolved, logical way.
Like we're just exchanging pure data.
Right, exactly. But the reality of social dynamics and human biology just completely shatters that assumption.
Which is why we're doing this deep dive today. Because there's this investment banker who got so fed up with this exact phenomenon happening to him that he basically crossbred high-stakes finance with evolutionary biology.
Yeah. Ornclaf.
Yes, Ornclaf. And he developed a system called Pitch Anything. And the thing is, Claff isn't a traditional salesperson.
No, not at all.
He doesn't teach, like, cheesy closing lines. He is in the trenches raising millions of dollars weekly. And he built this methodology based on what he calls neurofinance.
Which is just an incredibly potent collision of neuroscience and economics. And if you look at the landscape of communication right now, I mean, this biological approach is kind of the only thing that still works.
Because of our attention spans.
Yeah, we live in an era of infinite distraction. Attention spans are virtually non-existent, and everyone's baseline level of cognitive overwhelm is just off the charts.
Right.
So those old school sales tactics, the always be closing mindset, the high pressure trial closes, the begging for validation, they fail miserably today.
Because people's defenses are up.
Exactly. Their biological defense mechanisms are hypersensitive. So to get someone to genuinely listen to you, let alone agree to fund your idea or hire you, you have to physically alter the state of their brain to capture and hold their attention.
And that brings us to the central thesis of classic tire framework. There is this massive, invisible disconnect in how human beings communicate when the stakes are high.
Yeah, it's a huge gap.
Because when you sit down at your laptop and build a pitch, you are using your highly evolved, logical neocortex, right? You're forming abstract, complex arguments.
But your audience is not receiving that pitch with their neocortex.
Exactly. They are receiving it with their primitive, survival-driven crocodile brain.
And that crocodile brain automatically filters out anything complex, anything boring, or anything it perceives as a threat.
So to win the room, you basically have to bypass your own instinct to be logical and learn to speak the native language of that crocodile brain.
Right. We're talking about bridging a communication gap that, it isn't measured in inches across a conference table. It's a gap measured in millions of years of evolutionary development.
It's wild to think about it that way. So let's start right at the root of that evolutionary gap. In the source material, Claff refers to the human brain as a biological kludge, which is a software engineering term for a clumsy, patched-together workaround, like a system that technically functions but is incredibly inefficient because new parts were just sort of bolted onto old, outdated parts.
It's the perfect metaphor.
How does that apply to the hardware inside our skulls?
Well, because the human brain wasn't designed from scratch to sit in boardrooms and analyze spreadsheets.
Right.
It evolved in 3 distinct stages over millions of years, which is often referred to as the triune brain model.
Okay.
So the first stage, the oldest and most primitive part, is what we call the crocodile brain, or the croc brain. Physically, this is the brainstem and the basal ganglia.
And what does it do?
Its entire operating system is dedicated to raw survival. Fight, flight, feed, or reproduce. It filters all incoming sensory data just to keep you alive in a dangerous environment.
Okay, so pure survival.
Exactly. Then, millions of years later, the second stage evolved, the midbrain, or the limbic system.
Right, the social part.
Yep. This is where we process social hierarchies, determine the meaning of social interactions, feel complex emotions.
So it's survival first, then social dynamics second.
Precisely. And then finally, as a very recent evolutionary add-on, The newest part of the brain developed the neocortex.
The big wrinkled part.
Yeah, that massive outer layer that makes us uniquely human. It handles complex problem-solving, logic, reason, language, mathematics, abstract thought.
Okay, so I see the clues now.
Yes.
When I write my presentation, I'm using that shiny, new, highly advanced neocortex. I'm synthesizing data, projecting future revenue, using advanced vocabulary. Like, I am broadcasting strictly on the neocortex frequency.
But here is the fatal biological disconnect. When you broadcast that message, it does not go straight into the listener's neocortex.
Where does it go?
Biology dictates that every single piece of information a human receives must pass through the crocodile brain first.
Wow.
It acts as this incredibly aggressive bouncer at the door of the mind.
And this bouncer is essentially a cognitive miser, right? Like, it has extremely limited processing power, and it wants to conserve energy at all costs.
It has to. I mean, the human brain consumes about 20% of the body's entire energy supply, despite only making up like 2% of its weight.
That's great.
Thinking hard is physically exhausting. It depletes glucose. So the brain's primary job is to ensure you have enough energy to survive a sudden tiger attack.
Okay, so it's filtering everything based on survival.
Ruthlessly. Its operating instructions for filtering your pitch are simple. Rule 1, if it's not dangerous, ignore it. Rule 2, if it's not radically new and exciting, ignore it.
Okay.
Rule 3, if it is new, summarize it as brutally and quickly as possible and discard the details.
Wow. So it just throws away the nuance.
Completely. The croc brain will absolutely refuse to send information up to the neocortex for logical processing unless it determines the information is a highly unexpected, high-stakes anomaly.
Claff uses a very visceral example to explain the sequence, which I love.
Oh, the parking lot one.
Yeah. So imagine you are walking to your car alone in a dark parking lot, and suddenly you hear someone shouting aggressively right behind you.
The reaction isn't logical at all.
No, it's totally biological. Instantly, your crocodile brain takes over. You flinch. Your heart rate spikes. Adrenaline floods your system.
That is the survival mechanism overriding everything else.
Exactly. Then you turn around and your midbrain kicks in to analyze the social context. Like, is this person an enemy? A friend? A drunk college kid?
Right, figuring out the social dynamic.
And then finally, your neocortex spins up to process the granular details and actually solve the problem. You realize, oh, it's just a guy yelling at his buddy who is walking across the street.
And then the danger passes.
Yeah, your heart rate settles. But the sequence is so rigid, it's always survival, then social, then logical.
Now take that rigid biological sequence and place it inside a corporate boardroom.
Oh, man.
You walk in, hook up your laptop, and start presenting this dense 20-slide deck on market synergies, historical growth patterns, and return on investment.
Pure logic.
Right, your neocortex is doing the talking. But the person across the table is receiving that data with their crocodile brain.
So they're looking for the tiger.
Exactly. Their primitive brain is looking at your complex charts and running its basic heuristic. Is this a physical emergency? No. Can I ignore it to conserve glucose? Yes.
That is brutal.
Up to 90% of your meticulously researched message is simply discarded before it ever reaches their logic center.
You know, it's like I'm trying to send a massive, complex 4K video file to someone who only has a 1990s alphanumeric pager.
Ah, yes.
The file is just too big and it crashes their system entirely.
That's exactly the physiological reality. The crocodile brain doesn't do nuance. It doesn't do macroeconomic trends.
Right.
When you send it high-level, complex information, it doesn't just fail to understand it. It perceives that complexity as a literal threat to its energy reserves.
Wait, a physical threat just from a boring PowerPoint?
Yes, because cognitive load theory dictates that processing complex, abstract concepts burns a massive amount of mental fuel.
And the croc brain hates burning fuel.
It knows it needs to keep reserves high for survival. So when you present something highly complicated without providing a simple, high-contrast context first, a biological circuit breaker trips.
What happens then?
The brain literally releases a neurotoxin. Think of it like a biological FedEx routing number attached to your pitch, sending it directly to the amygdala.
Oh, and the amygdala is the fear and anxiety center of the brain, right?
Correct. So the person listening to your dense financial pitch suddenly feels a primal physical urge to escape the room.
Wow.
They don't consciously know why they want to leave. They just know they feel exhausted, slightly anxious, and they desperately want this meeting to end so they can go check their email which is a low-energy, highly predictable task.
This explains every single pitch meeting I've ever been in where you can just feel the oxygen leave the room the moment the second slide clicks on.
It's palpable.
So how do we stop crashing their pagers? If I'm pitching a new, complex software tool to a stressed-out department head, what is the practical adaptation?
You have to radically alter the architecture of your opening. Stop leading with company histories, dense analytics, or complicated implementation timelines.
So no, here's a timeline of our company's growth since 1998.
Absolutely not. To get past the crocodile brain, you must present information that is simple, high contrast, highly visual, and novel.
High contrast meaning what?
The croc brain loves clear, black and white options, hot or cold, fast or slow.
Okay, no shades of gray.
Right. And it craves novelty because novelty triggers dopamine, which feels good. If you make your opening simple, visual, and exciting, the croc brain feels safe, categorizes you as a non-threat, and passes the information up the chain to the neocortex.
Okay, so if the croc brain is this hyper-aggressive bouncer at the door, and we have to get past it by keeping things high contrast and novel, we also have to understand the invisible social hierarchy it constantly monitors.
Because it's obsessed with status.
Right. It's deeply, almost obsessively attuned to power. The moment you walk into a room, it is calculating who is the alpha and who is subordinate.
Instantly.
Which brings us to the sociological core of Claff's method of frames and frame control.
This is where we transition from purely evolutionary biology into the realm of social dynamics.
Okay, let's break that down.
The concept of a frame has its roots in sociology, specifically the work of Irving Goffman. A frame is essentially a psychological lens through which we view the world.
Like a perspective.
Yeah, but more rigid. It is the invisible instrument you use to package your power, your authority, your worldview, and your status. Every single person brings a specific frame to every social encounter.
And the absolute uncompromising rule of social dynamics, according to Clough, is that frames do not merge.
They never blend.
Right. They don't compromise. When two people meet, their frames collide in a psychological death match.
It really is a death match.
And the stronger frame completely absorbs the weaker one.
It sounds incredibly dramatic, I know, but it happens subconsciously thousands of times a day. Only one frame survives the collision.
And the winner gets what?
The winner enjoys what we call frame control, meaning their ideas, their pacing, and their worldview are accepted as the reality of the room.
And the loser?
The loser becomes subordinate, and their success or failure now depends entirely on the charity of the winner.
To make this tangible, Clough uses the ultimate example of a frame collision that just instantly makes sense, the cop frame.
Best example in the book.
Imagine you're driving down the highway at 80 miles per hour. It's a gorgeous day. Your favorite music is on. You feel completely relaxed and in control of your own universe.
You're in your own frame.
Exactly. Suddenly, you see flashing lights in the rearview mirror. The siren goes whoop, whoop. Instantly, your croc brain takes over.
Fear sets in.
You pull over. The police officer walks up to your window.
Now, pay close attention to the mechanics of that interaction. The officer does not pitch you on why he's giving you a ticket.
Right. He doesn't say, "Excuse me, I'd like to present some data on speeding."
No. He does not provide a spreadsheet of local accident statistics to build consensus. He doesn't rationally debate the merits of the speed limit with your neocortex.
He doesn't have to.
His frame is built on absolute moral, physical, and state-sanctioned authority.
And you, as the driver, you don't say, "Well, officer, let's look at the synergy of my driving speed versus the aerodynamic wind resistance of my vehicle."
You'd look insane.
Your frame completely crumbles. You're instantly subordinate. You hand over your license, you accept the piece of paper, and he says, "Sign here, press hard, 5th copy is yours."
That is total, flawless frame control.
The stronger frame absorbed the weaker one without a single logical argument being made.
And that is the defining characteristic of a strong frame. It is entirely impervious to rational arguments.
Oh, that's interesting.
If you ever find yourself explaining your authority or using logic to justify why your deal makes sense to someone who is dominating you socially, you have already lost the frame collision.
Because logic bounces off frames.
Exactly. Logical facts just bounce harmlessly off a stronger frame.
So let's pull this out of the traffic stop and put it into the business world.
Okay.
Clough outlines 3 major opposing frames you will constantly face.
The power frame, the time frame, and the analyst frame.
Let's start with the most intimidating one, the power frame. This is the arrogant executive. The big shot who acts like they're doing you a massive favor just by breathing the same oxygen as you.
We've all met them.
Clough tells this incredible story of pitching to a guy named Steve at a major money center bank.
Right, and the stakes in this meeting were massive. It was a $60 million deal.
$60 million?
And Steve is a classic power frame. He's an executive who is used to doing $100 million deals before lunch, so his entire posture is designed to show you that he is completely unimpressed.
Just oozing status.
Yeah. So during the middle of Claff's pitch, Claff looks across the table, and Steve has literally taken Claff's meticulously crafted pitch book, flipped it over, and is absent-mindedly tracing his own hand on the back of it with a pen.
I would evaporate.
Right.
I would literally shrink into the upholstery of my chair. That is the ultimate primal signal of, I am vastly more important than you, and I do not care about a word you're saying.
And instinctively, most people would just start talking faster in that situation, right?
Oh, yeah. They'd raise their voice, try to point back to the slides, basically begging to win his attention back, supplicating.
Which is exactly what the power frame is engineered to make you do. They expect deference.
So if you do that, you lose.
Totally. The moment you abide by the rituals of their power, the moment you talk faster to appease them, you reinforce their frame. You confirm to their crocodile brain that you are low status. You lose.
So how do you beat it?
To defeat a power frame, you have to use a power-busting frame. You have to use small, highly calibrated acts of denial and defiance.
What Claff does next is wild. He stops talking, reaches across the table, physically pulls the pitch book out from under Steve's pen, and says, Steve, give me that. Wait a second, this drawing is pretty damn good. Forget the big deal for a minute. How about you sell this to me, name a price?
It is a breathtakingly brilliant move.
It's insane.
It is mildly shocking, but importantly, it isn't unfriendly. It instantly disrupts the established power dynamic.
Right.
Claff took the frame away by trivializing Steve's power play and forcing Steve to react to him.
Wait, I have to push back hard on this.
Okay, go ahead.
If I am in a meeting with the CEO of a major tech firm, and I physically snatch a document out of his hands and tell him to sell me a doodle, I'm not getting the deal. I'm getting escorted out of the building by security.
That's a valid fear.
Isn't he advocating for just being wildly aggressive and unprofessional?
See, that is the absolute crux of the maneuver, and it requires what Claff calls local star power.
A local star power.
It absolutely cannot be done with malice, aggression, or a tone of annoyance. If you are aggressive, you trigger their croc brain's threat response, and they will fight you or throw you out.
So you have to be cool about it.
It must be done with a relaxed smile, a soft touch, and playful humor. You are essentially shifting the interaction from a corporate hierarchy into a peer-to-peer game.
Okay, so it's about playful defiance, not actual combat.
Exactly. When you do it with a grin, it demonstrates a massive amount of internal confidence. You aren't being a jerk.
You're just holding your ground.
Right. You are signaling through nonverbal cues that you are a high-status individual who isn't easily intimidated by corporate theater.
And the croc brain loves that.
The croc brain deeply respects strength and social confidence. It tells the target's brain, oh, this person isn't a subordinate. They are a pro. The game is on.
The game is on. I love that framing. Now, what about the time frame? Because this is the one I encounter constantly.
Very common.
You walk into a meeting, you scheduled an hour, and the person immediately looks at their watch and says, hey, things are crazy today. I only have 10 minutes. Just get to the point.
That is a classic, highly effective trap to seize frame control right out of the gate.
Right. Because if you say, oh gosh, I completely understand, I'll talk really fast.
You've lost.
Right.
You have accepted a subordinate frame. Their time is valuable. Yours is worthless. The practical adaptation here is to use a time-constraining frame to seize the momentum back.
So you push back.
You use a small, polite act of denial.
So if a potential client says, I only have 15 minutes, you don't panic. You smile, look them in the eye, and say, that's completely fine. I actually only have 12 minutes before I need to jump on my next call anyway. Let's make it count.
Boom. You immediately take the power back.
It's so simple, but so effective.
You are communicating directly to their croc brain that your time is just as scarce, if not more valuable, than theirs. You control the clock, which means you control the frame.
Okay, so the third major collision is the analyst frame.
This one is tricky.
Yeah, this is the engineer or the deeply analytical finance person who suddenly wants to drill down into the microscopic details of page 42 of your appendix while you are still trying to cast a broad vision.
Right, they demand granular data instantly.
Why is that so dangerous?
The analyst frame is dangerous because it kills momentum by forcing cold analytical cognition.
Which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, we will get into the neurology of this, but essentially, you cannot have a listener in a state of hot, emotional engagement and cold analytical thinking at the same time.
The brain can't do both.
No, the brain physically shifts blood flow to different regions depending on the task. If they pull you into the weeds of a spreadsheet, the emotional resonance of the pitch dies.
So how do you defeat it?
You defeat this with the intrigue frame.
Okay, let's build a real-world example for this one. Let's say I'm a freelance designer.
Okay.
I'm pitching a brand identity overhaul to a client. I'm trying to cast this vision of how their brand will feel, but the client interrupts and says, yeah, but what exact hex codes are you using for the primary button states, and what is the exact pixel padding on the mobile view?
A total analyst trap.
How do I handle that without sounding like I don't know the answer?
You answer their technical question with a very brief, high-level summary to show competence, but then you instantly pivot away from the data and into a compelling personal narrative.
Like a story.
Exactly. You would say, we use a standard 16-pixel padding for touch targets, but actually the reason we designed mobile first goes back to a disaster I had with a massive e-commerce client 2 years ago.
Oh, that's good.
And then you launch into a story that involves you, has high stakes, and creates suspense.
Because the brain loves a story.
The human brain is biologically hardwired to prioritize narrative over data. A good story physically yanks them out of analytical mode and pulls them back into your narrative frame.
Okay, let's say I successfully use humor to break their power frame, or a story to break their analyst frame. I've leveled the playing field.
You've got the frame.
Right, but internally, underneath the confident act, I still desperately need their money, or I desperately need this job.
Sure.
Won't my underlying desperation just leak out and ruin the dynamic? Like, how do I hide that neediness?
That leads us directly into key concept 3, prizing, and the eradication of neediness.
Okay, prizing.
This might be the most psychologically demanding part of CLAF's entire methodology. It requires you to fundamentally rewire your relationship with status, money, and approval.
Because of the dynamic of who's chasing whom.
Exactly. It all boils down to the underlying dynamic of every business interaction, who is chasing who.
Right. And society conditions us from birth to believe that the person with the money is the prize. The investor, the boss, the client, they hold the gold, so they make the rules. We put on the uncomfortable suit, we buy them coffee, we say, thank you so much for your valuable time. We are conditioned to chase the money.
And CLAF argues that this is entirely backward, both economically and biologically.
How so?
Because money is just a commodity. It is completely inert on its own. $1 million sitting in a bank account cannot build a product. It cannot generate a return. It cannot solve a complex market problem without your great idea and your execution.
That's a great point.
Therefore, the money is not the prize. You are the prize.
To illustrate how powerful it is when you truly embody being the prize, CLAF brings up the French waiter analogy.
Yes.
Have you ever been to a truly authentic, high-end French restaurant in Paris?
I have, and it's quite an experience.
The waiter there, let's call him Benoit, he controls the entire social dynamic. You might be a billionaire CEO back in New York, but when you step into Benoit's domain, he wipes your corporate status completely clean.
You're in his world now.
Exactly. He tells you where you will sit. He tells you what the specials are. If you mispronounce a Bordeaux, he corrects you. He makes you wait for his service.
And what happens?
You suddenly find yourself desperate for his approval. He has completely flipped the power dynamic.
The French waiter demonstrates perfect frame control and prizing. He doesn't need your validation. He knows his domain, his expertise, is superior to yours in that moment.
And he's not needy.
Right. And this connects directly back to the biology of the crocodile brain and the concept of neediness. The crocodile brain is highly evolved to detect neediness as a primal threat signal.
Okay, wait, neediness is a threat? How? If someone is begging me for a sale, they aren't threatening me, they are just annoying me.
In the evolutionary sense, it is a severe threat.
Why?
If you encounter someone who is overly eager, leaning forward too much, talking too fast, desperate for your approval, your croc brain perceives them as low status. In a tribal environment, a low-status, desperate person is a drain on your limited resources.
Oh, because they don't provide.
Exactly. So it triggers an automatic biological avoidance response. When you use old-school sales tactics or try to force a trial close because you are desperate for the commission, you are broadcasting neediness.
And their croc brain reacts.
The buyer's croc brain immediately wants to physically distance itself from you.
You know, this reminds me exactly of modern dating dynamics.
Oh, totally.
It's the classic attachment theory parallel. The person who cares the least, or at least appears to need the other person the least, holds all the power in the dynamic.
Sad but true.
If you text someone 5 times in a row without a response, you look desperate and they pull away.
It is the exact same underlying psychological mechanism. Human beings are biologically wired to chase that which moves away from them and to devalue that which is easily obtained.
So how do we eradicate that neediness in a business setting?
Klaff references a philosophy he calls the Tao of Steve, which is based on an old independent movie.
What's the framework?
The framework is 3 steps: eliminate your desires, be excellent in the presence of others, and withdraw.
Eliminate desire. Be excellent. Withdraw.
Right.
How does that look in practice? Let's say I'm in a final job interview for a role I really, really want.
First, before you walk in, you must genuinely let go of your desperate need for the job.
Easier said than done.
True, but you have to convince yourself that you will be fine without it. Second, during the interview, you demonstrate your expertise. You be excellent. You answer their questions with deep competence.
Okay, so that's the standard part.
But the magic happens in step 3. Right at the end of the interview, when a traditional candidate would lean in and say, "So what do I need to do to prove I'm the right fit for this role?"
The needy close.
Right. You do the exact opposite. You physically lean back. You withdraw.
You pull away. You say something like, look, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I have a few other competitive offers on the table, and I'm very careful about where I commit the next few years of my career. Given your current market position, why do you think this company is the right place for someone with my specific skill set?
That is flawless prizing. You make them qualify themselves to you.
It's so bold.
You force them to explain why they are worthy of your talent. You transition from always be closing to always be leaving.
Always be leaving.
By demonstrating a genuine willingness to walk away, you prove that you are the prize. You trigger their biological instinct to chase.
It is a complete 180-degree inversion of how most of us operate.
It really is.
Okay, so we've mapped the terrain, you've disrupted their power frame, you've established yourself as the prize, you finally have their true, undivided attention.
Yes.
But practically speaking, how long does that window last? And what is actually happening in their brain while they are paying attention?
That brings us to key concept 4, the chemistry of attention and the 20-minute limit.
The chemistry of attention.
This is where we get into the literal neurochemistry of the pitch.
All right.
We tend to think of attention as a polite, conscious choice someone makes.
Right, like I will pay attention now.
It isn't. Attention is a specific, highly metabolic, biological cocktail in the brain. To have someone's rapt, engaged attention, you need 2 specific neurotransmitters flowing simultaneously, dopamine and norepinephrine.
Okay, let's break those down. Dopamine is the one everyone knows. It's the reward chemical.
Yes.
It's what social media algorithms hack to keep us scrolling.
Exactly. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of desire, pleasure, and reward anticipation. In the context of a pitch, you trigger dopamine by introducing novelty.
Because the croc brain loves novelty.
The croc brain loves new, shiny, interesting things. When you show a visually striking slide or explain a surprising new market trend, dopamine is released. The listener feels a sense of reward and desire.
But dopamine alone isn't enough, right?
No.
If they just have dopamine, they're entertained, like watching a movie, but they don't feel any urgency to act. That's where the second chemical comes in, norepinephrine.
Norepinephrine is closely related to adrenaline. It is the neurotransmitter of tension, alertness, and arousal.
So it creates stakes.
It signals to the brain that there are real stakes involved, that there are consequences to this interaction. If you only have dopamine, you are an entertainer. If you only have norepinephrine, you are terrifying to them. They feel anxious and threatened.
That makes perfect sense.
To command true attention, you need both novelty to create desire and tension to keep them highly alert.
And this requires immense physical energy from the brain.
Huge amounts.
Which leads to the most important rule of pacing in Klaff's method. How long can the brain sustain that specific high-energy cocktail before it physically exhausts its glucose supply?
The biological limit is about 20 minutes.
20 minutes, that's it.
That's it. After 20 minutes of intense, high-stakes focus, the brain begins to fatigue. The prefrontal cortex starts running out of glucose. The dopamine and norepinephrine cocktail fades.
And then what?
The croc brain takes over again to conserve energy, and it starts aggressively looking for an exit. This is why a 60-minute pitch is a biological death sentence.
So you have exactly 20 minutes to get in, deliver the payload, and get out. Klaff outlines a very strict structure for those 20 minutes. Phase 1 is the first 5 minutes. You introduce yourself briefly, just your greatest hits, your track record. No reading a chronological resume.
Nobody cares about your resume.
Then you immediately deploy the why now frame. And I found this part fascinating because it answers the unspoken question in every buyer's mind. Why should I care about this today instead of next year?
The why now frame is how you create massive relevance. You do this by triangulating three broad forces: economic forces, social forces, and technological forces.
Triangulating them.
You show the audience that a specific unprecedented market window has just opened, and your idea is the vehicle moving right through it.
Okay, because the croc brain ignores static things, right?
Remember, the croc brain ignores static objects. It is hardwired to notice movement and contrast. By showing how the market is actively shifting, you avoid change blindness and lock in their attention.
So if I'm pitching an AI workflow tool to my boss, I don't just say, this tool saves time.
Too static.
I triangulate. I say, economically, our budget is shrinking because of interest rates. Socially, our team is fully remote and struggling to collaborate. Technologically, generative AI has just reached a point where it can automate our specific bottlenecks. This is the exact moment we need to deploy this.
That is so much more powerful than a feature list.
It creates a sense of inevitable momentum.
Right.
Once you establish the why now you move to phase 2, which is the big idea. And to see this executed perfectly, we have to talk about the airport deal case study from the book.
Oh, this is the best part.
Claff and his boutique firm are trying to raise $1 billion to renovate an old, decaying WWII-era airport.
$1 billion.
They are competing against Goldhammer, a massive, multi-billion-dollar prestige firm. Goldhammer does exactly what you'd expect. They show up with thick binders of spreadsheets, giant corporate logos, and they drone on for an hour about their pedigree and internal rate of return.
Goldhammer pitched to the neocortex. They assumed cold, hard data would win the day.
But Claff walked in and did something completely different. He didn't bring spreadsheets. He brought giant, beautifully printed poster boards of what he called aviation porn.
He fed the target's crocodile brain massive doses of pure dopamine.
Visuals.
He showed high-definition, emotionally evocative photos of fighter jets taking off, planes breaking sharply against a blue sky, the history of aviation. It was highly visual, highly novel.
And the narrative?
Instead of pitching the financial mechanics, he pitched an American legacy narrative.
Yeah.
He framed the project not as a sterile real estate transaction, but as a once-in-a-lifetime chance for these wealthy investors to become heroes by saving a piece of vital American history.
He made them feel the deal in their chest.
Exactly.
And to keep them alert, to keep that norepinephrine pumping so they didn't just passively enjoy the pictures, he used what he calls the push-pull pattern.
Right.
This is how you engineer tension. You pull the client in, you say, imagine what we could build together. With our operational strategy and your deep passion for aviation, we would be completely unstoppable.
That triggers desire.
But then you immediately push them away. You say, but honestly, I don't know if this is going to work. A lot of institutional firms only care about the quarterly numbers, and they don't have the integrity required for a legacy project like this. If we don't align on those core values, we shouldn't do this deal.
That push is a micro-rejection.
Yeah.
It creates sudden, sharp tension.
1 weeks.
It signals to their brain that you are genuinely willing to walk away, which reestablishes you as the prize. It keeps the audience slightly off balance.
Because if you only pull,
if you only compliment them and talk about how great it will be, you seem needy and low status. The push-pull dynamic is what keeps the brain locked in that high-alert 20-minute flow state.
Okay, so the 20 minutes are up. You've held their attention. You've navigated the frame collisions. You've pumped them full of dopamine and tension.
And done the hard work.
You are at the absolute climax of the meeting. Phase 3 is just a quick 2-minute wrap-up of the actual mechanics of the deal.
Yeah.
But how do you trigger that final yes? How do you avoid the dreaded, this all sounds really interesting, let me take these slides home, think about it for a week, and get back to you?
The worst phrase in business.
That brings us to our final key concept, hot cognitions and frame stacking.
Right. So to understand how to close a deal, we have to separate how the neocortex makes decisions versus how the crocodile brain makes decisions.
Okay.
The neocortex uses what Daniel Kahneman might call System 2 thinking, or what Claff calls cold cognition.
Cold cognition.
This is slow, rational, heavily analytical evaluation. It's when you take a spreadsheet home, build a pros and cons list, and weigh the risk-adjusted returns for a week.
It's like deciding which health insurance plan to pick during open enrollment. It's cold, it's boring, and it takes forever.
Exactly. But the crocodile brain uses hot cognition.
And what is that?
A hot cognition is an instant visceral, emotional feeling of wanting something before logic even has time to boot up. It is fast, and it is entirely driven by emotion and framing.
So it's impulsive.
Cold cognition is knowing that a salad is nutritionally optimal for your long-term health. Hot cognition is seeing a warm, gooey chocolate chip cookie and instantly reaching for it because your brain desires it right now.
In a pitch, we want to serve them the cookie. We want to trigger that hot cognition right at the finish line, so they want the deal before they overanalyze it.
Yes.
And the specific technique for doing this is called frame stacking. You rapidly stack 4 specific frames right on top of each other to overwhelm the neocortex and force a gut-level decision.
The 4 frames you stack are intrigue, prize, time, and moral authority.
Clash shares an amazing story of how a Wall Street trader actually used this exact stack on him, right?
Yes, and it worked so well that Clough's own analytical brain just short-circuited.
Clough is trying to buy this package of defaulted debt. He considers himself a master negotiator. And the seller, this Wall Street trader, drops all 4 frames on him in like 30 seconds.
Watch how he does it.
First, intrigue. The trader says, once we get this deal done, I'm going to introduce you to our senior trader. He's a total wild man. You guys are going to have a love connection. He'll get you into the massive off-market deals you don't even see.
Clough is instantly hooked by the story. He wants to meet the wild man.
Then the trader seamlessly hits the prize frame. He says, if you work hard, you can earn your way into his deals.
Notice the subtle phrasing, earn your way in.
Yeah, Clough isn't the prize with the money anymore.
The trader's exclusive network is the prize, and Clough has to prove he is worthy of it.
Then, immediately into the time frame, the trader says, the market is on fire right now. I have the French and the South Africans begging me for this exact debt package.
The window is closing. Scarcity kicks in.
And finally, the moral authority frame. The trader warns him, but don't play any funny retrade games with us. We only do business with straight shooters.
He establishes a moral high ground, demanding ethical behavior, which makes Clough subconsciously want to prove that he is a good, honest guy who belongs in their club.
Clough admits in the book that he didn't even look at the spreadsheets anymore. He just yelled, send me the docs, I'm doing it. He just wanted the deal. His cold cognition was completely bypassed.
It's so powerful.
Let's translate this into an everyday scenario for you listening. Let's go back to our freelance web designer. She's pitching a $5,000 website redesign to a local business owner. She's hit the 20-minute mark. How does she stack the frames to trigger a hot cognition instead of getting the let me think about it response?
She would orchestrate it exactly like the trader. She wraps up the vision and then says, look, once we launch this new site, I want to introduce you to a brilliant SEO specialist I know who only worked with top-tier local brands. She can multiply your traffic.
That's the intrigue frame.
Then she says, I usually only refer my absolute best clients to her, the ones who are really ready to scale.
That's the prize frame, making the client want to prove they're a top-tier brand.
Next, I know she's taking on a few new clients next week, and I only have bandwidth to design one more site this month.
That's the time frame, creating scarcity.
And finally, but I need to know you guys are fully committed to the process because I don't work with teams who cut corners on quality.
And that is the moral authority frame. Boom. Intrigue, prize, time, moral authority. If you do that smoothly, you overwhelm their neocortex. You trigger a primal desire to act.
Exactly.
The practical takeaway here is a massive never, ever end a pitch by asking, so what do you think? Asking, what do you think? Is begging for cold cognition. It invites analysis, delay, and doubt.
It invites the very analytical friction you just spent 20 minutes trying to bypass. You don't ask what they think. You stack the frames, state your terms, and wait for them to chase you.
Okay, let's step back and look at the macro picture here. We have covered a massive amount of conceptual ground.
We really have.
We started with evolutionary brain biology and the metabolic costs of the triune brain. We moved into sociological power dynamics, Irving Goffman, and frame collisions. We explored the neurochemistry of attention with dopamine and norepinephrine. And we finished with cognitive psychology, separating hot and cold decision-making.
It's a lot to take in.
How does this all fit together? Like, what is the underlying unified logic of this book?
The underlying logic is that Clough has completely dismantled the traditional model of persuasion.
How so?
The old model assumed persuasion was an intellectual exercise, a debate between two rational minds. Clough proves it is a biological and social game. The concepts flow in a perfect sequential hierarchy.
Walk us through it.
First, evolutionary biology dictates that the primitive crocodile brain is the gatekeeper of all incoming information.
Right.
because that croc brain cannot process logic. It relies entirely on social psychology, specifically frames and status, to determine who is even worth listening to.
So you seize the frame.
Right. Once you establish dominance through frame control and pricing, you then use neurochemistry, triggering dopamine and norepinephrine, to hold their attention for the strict 20-minute biological limit.
The push and pull.
And finally, you use cognitive psychology via frame stacking to trigger a hot cognition, creating a biological wanting that closes the deal before the logical neocortex can get in the way.
Oh.
It is a seamless, unified transition from biology to sociology to chemistry to action.
It truly is a unified theory of human interaction. And I want to be very clear about who this is for, because we've talked about Wall Street traders, billion-dollar airport deals, high-stakes finance.
Yeah, it sounds intense.
If you are listening to this, you might think, well, this is fascinating, but I'm just a mid-level manager trying to get a budget approved. Or I'm a graphic designer pitching a rebrand. This method is not just for investment bankers, is it?
I would argue it is actually more crucial for the everyday professional.
Why?
This book is specifically for anyone who is exhausted by feeling subservient in their business or personal relationships.
Oh, yeah.
If you have ever felt that slimy, needy feeling of traditional sales tactics, the forced smiles, the begging for 5 minutes of someone's time, the desperate follow-up emails, the feeling that you are constantly dancing for someone else's approval and you hated it, this methodology is the antidote.
The antidote to neediness.
If you want to maintain your dignity, establish your own intrinsic value, and have people chase you for a change, you have to understand the biology of how power works.
It's about reclaiming your agency in any room you walk into.
Completely.
Well, we've taken you through the architecture of the brain, the clash of social frames, and the chemistry of attention. But what we've covered today is truly just scratching the surface of Claff's system.
Oh, there is so much more.
The book is packed with even more granular tactics, specific conversational scripts, and incredible case studies on how to handle almost any curveball a client can throw at you.
It really is just the foundation of understanding this dynamic. The nuance of executing it in real time requires deep study.
So if you felt a light bulb go off today, if you realize you've been pitching to the wrong part of the brain your entire career and you want to fix it, there's a natural next step. We have a complete audio course available.
Highly recommended.
It's several hours long, covering every single chapter of this book in incredible depth. We go into more detailed explanations of the neuroscience, we break down real-world examples, and we provide step-by-step actionable takeaways for every single framework we touched on today. Just check the link in the description if you want to master this and genuinely change the way you communicate forever.
And as we leave you today, I want to offer one final thought for you to mull over.
What's that?
The next time you walk into a meeting, whether it's a high-stakes pitch for $1 million or just your weekly team sync on Tuesday morning, don't focus so much on the words being spoken.
Look past the words.
Instead, look at the invisible architecture of the room. Watch the body language. Listen to the pacing. Observe who controls the time. Ask yourself who owns the frame right now and who is chasing whom.
Because once you see it,
Once you start seeing the matrix of social dynamics, you can never unsee it.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.